Elena always arrived a few minutes before everyone else. It wasn't discipline, nor a desire to impress. It was a habit honed over the years, a reflex. The hallways at that hour carried the scent of the night. Diluted detergent, the cooled plastic of computers, a metallic trace held by the air conditioning filters. The fluorescent tubes flickered briefly, then settled into a cold, uniform light. She moved through that suspended space with the calm of someone who knows that, until the world steps in, control is still hers. Sitting at her desk, Elena felt the surface beneath her hands, smooth, with scratches and dull spots. She rested her palms, sliding slightly over the imperfections, as if to remind herself she was present. The warm hum of the servers, the faint scraping of chairs on the rubber floor, the smell of dust and paper, all of it gave a tangible sense to her routine. At first, the environment seemed to promise space to grow, space to be noticed. But soon, those small flickering lights became subtle omens. Francesca had arrived around the same time. Slightly taller, always neat hair, eyes attentive to every micro-movement. She appeared kind, smiling, but there was a rigor in her motions that Elena learned to read. Every word and gesture carefully calibrated to command attention and position herself within the group. There was no outright malice, at least none apparent, just a constant drive to emerge. Francesca knew the unwritten rules of the office and followed them precisely. Who does things first? Who gets noticed? Who knows how not to disturb the system too much? The first signs were almost imperceptible. During a meeting, Elena proposed a clear solution to a technical problem. Francesca listened, nodded, and discreetly took notes. 20 minutes later, the same idea, slightly altered, was presented by Francesca to the manager, earning immediate approval. Elena sat back, hands on the rough edge of her desk, eyes on the cold tablet in her hands. She said nothing. It wasn't anger, but a different sensation, a weight, like the fabric of a shirt sticking to damp skin and anxiety. The following days continued in the same pattern. Elena sent reports, some were used without crediting her work. Other times she was assigned secondary tasks, taking meeting minutes or organizing documents, while Francesca participated in key decisions. There was no overt aggression. Everything was wrapped in gestures of courtesy and apparent kindness. Yet Elena felt the slow accumulation of invisible pressure, manifesting as tightness between her shoulder blades, a faint prickling in her fingertips as they touched the mouse. Every gesture, every sound became significant. The clatter of keyboards changed when Francesca was nearby. The muffled steps on the rubber floor told who moved with confidence and who did not. The smell of burnt coffee rose every 2 hours, insistent, a reminder that the office kept running regardless of personal frustrations. One Tuesday morning, everything seemed to reach a critical point. Elena was presenting a detailed analysis, the result of weeks of work. The graphs slid smoothly across the screen, her voice measured and calm. The manager listened distractedly, eyes on the phone, while Francesca, sitting beside her, sketched lines in her notebook without looking up. Then, with a gentle but firm gesture, Francesca took Elena's tablet to show the graph to others. The device thumped onto the table louder than expected. No one intervened. The silence was palpable, almost tangible. Elena felt every detail: the roughness of her chair, the slightly stale air, the pressure on her chest. It wasn't anger. It was clarity. For the first time, she understood the complexity of the mechanism. Francesca wasn't bad. She was a cog operating according to unwritten rules. And the system ran on, ignoring those who remained silent. After the meeting, Elena retreated to the company kitchen. The steel counter felt cold on her hands. The burnt coffee smell was stronger, the taste of stale dry cookies on her fingers. Leaning there, she tried to organize her thoughts when Sarah, a sympathetic colleague, came in. Her hands smelled of fresh citrus soap, her hair tied in a messy ponytail. Without pressure, she asked, "Everything okay?" Elena began to speak, calmly, listing episodes and situations, detailing the accumulated discomfort. Sarah listened, nodding, sharing similar experiences. In that moment, Elena felt the first opening. She was not alone. It wasn't about victory, but visibility and acknowledgement. The group decided to collect testimonies, concrete data, documented incidents, preparing for a meeting with HR. No protests, just observation. The meeting with HR manager took place in a room with dry air. The pen made a crisp, rhythmic sound on paper. No grand promises. "We will take note and intervene," said HR, in a neutral tone. That was enough for Elena. The path wasn't linear, nor heroic. It was the awareness of her own space. In the following months, changes came gradually. Meetings were more organized, whiteboards visible, ideas noted in front of everyone. Francesca began to include Elena more often in discussions, not out of friendship, but because the system had started to shift slowly. Competition didn't disappear, but became partial collaboration, more conscious. Elena continued taking notes, contributing in small ways, experimenting with her own voice. One day during a presentation, no one interrupted her. Her voice filled the space, steady, without seeking confirmation. The room was filled with the sound of pages turning, chairs creaking, measured breaths of colleagues. There was no applause, no congratulations, only attention, silent and tangible. Returning to her desk, her hands rested again on the rough edge of the surface. The desk was the same as always, but the weight on her chest had changed. It was no longer oppression, it was support. Not heroism, presence. In that awareness, Elena understood that her voice had never been weak. It had just been silent for too long. As Elena gathered the papers on her desk, the hum of the servers felt lighter, as if the space itself had breathed with her. The cold neon light hadn't changed, but its weight was different now. It illuminated the possibility of being seen, quietly, without shouting. And you, reading this, can feel the silence you hold every day, your hands resting on the rough edge of your own desk. In which moments have you stayed silent, and what would it take for your voice to finally be heard?